Happy Friday, guys, and welcome back. Daniel here from Malt Jack, and really appreciate you guys being back on the channel. We're all about whiskey, beers and barbecues. So got a very special episode for you guys today. You're probably super excited because you've just received your brand new adventure keg and you want to know all about it, how to put it together, how to maintain it, how to look after it, how to fill it up. So stay tuned and I'm going to run you guys all through it. You've received this big box in the mail, or you've bought it from one of our stockists or breweries or likes or something like that, and you're super excited to get your new kegs. So I completely understand. I've been using my kegs a number of times. When they're fully assembled, they're going to look something similar to this. Well, almost exactly the same as that one. So essentially, where do we start, or where do you guys start? Well, a good way to start is essentially opening the box. So if we get this big white box open, what you're going to see inside of the box is all your components in there. Okay, so the first thing you're going to essentially pull out on top is the assembly, usage, safety and warranty instructions. But if you're anything like me, you absolutely hate reading, and this is going to be a complete waste of time for you guys. So that's why I thought I'll sit down, grab one of these boxes and put this video together so you guys don't have to read too much. If you do have the time, run through it. It's got some good information in there and it'll show you exactly what this video does basically. So I'll put that over the side for now. Okay. Now in terms of contents, what you're going to find is this small little white box. Okay. If you open that one up there, you're going to have in there your tap. So you've got your tap handle, and inside here you're going to find your Malt Jack flow control tap. Okay, little flow lever on the side. Now make sure that is screwed in nice, because these handles on the side can get a little bit loose during transport. And then you're going to find a nice tap on the top. You will also get a standard black handle for your tap, okay, as well as our custom hand-turned timber handles. Okay, so you guys can use either. I mean, it's completely up to you. Obviously we'd prefer you to use the timber ones, but if you do prefer the cheap plastic black ones, then you can use those as well. So that's no big deal at all. So we'll talk about setting this tap up later on once you put the handle on, but there is actually a screw lever on the top there, so that'll adjust the motion on the tap and essentially how far you can move it. So you don't want to have it completely tight, that top little screw there, because then you're not going to be able to move your tap too much. So you do just need to back it off just a tiny little bit so you can get the full motion on there. Okay. So I'll leave that to the side for now. Next thing you're probably going to pull out is this little brown box over here. Now this has got a few goodies in there. Just going to move this over a little bit so I've got a bit more room. There. That over there. Alright, so in this little brown box, you've got a fair few goodies in there. So you've got a hose. I haven't actually measured that one, but that is actually quite long. Okay, so you can see here that's probably almost 1.2 meters. Okay, so we're going to have to cut this hose down before you assemble the keg. Okay, so I'll run you guys through that, because you don't want to have it at that length, because it's just going to get tangled and clogged, and it's not going to pick up the beer, because that's essentially your beer line. Okay, next thing you're going to find in here in a little white box is your mini regulator. Okay, so this gets screwed onto the side of the keg, and be careful as well, you'll also find a tiny little plastic bag with a little white ringed washer in there. Okay, so don't throw that out, keep that as a spare, because you might need that later on. So essentially where that goes is on the where you screw this into the keg, you'll have a little brass nut on there, and if you look inside in there, there is actually a little white washer in there. So that's a spare for that one if that ever deteriorates or breaks or something like that, you've got a spare washer over there. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside as well. Next thing you're going to find wrapped up, okay, is essentially the top housing. Okay, so this is what screws into the top of the keg that enables you then to screw your gas regulator in, screw your tap in. It's also got a spigot at the bottom that allows you to put your beer line in there. That'll suck the beer from the bottom of the keg, and on the back of it is your pressure relief valve, which is also very important. Okay, so this is the top housing spigot, I guess you'd call it. You know, all this stuff is a very good grade stainless steel. Okay, once again, for this one you're going to have a very big white washer on there, so it's a silicon washer on there. Now once again, you've got one on here, so it's on the top of this top housing, okay, and that's exactly what seals this top housing onto the top of your adventure keg. Okay, so that's a nice silicon washer in there, and that'll seal it properly. You only need one of those on there. Okay, so the second one in the kit is essentially going to be your spare. Okay, because this is silicon material, it can deteriorate over time. If you do ever have issues with this leaking or not retaining pressure, you can then take the old one off and put your spare on. So keep this one out of the light somewhere, you know, closed up in the box, packaged as your spare. Okay, so all that'll go over there. If we keep diving a bit further into this box, next thing you're going to find wrapped up are 5 CO2 cartridges. Okay, if you're lucky. Okay, you might find less, you might find more. Now look, I'm joking. There should be 5 in each kit. Okay, so there is 16 gram food grade CO2 cartridge. Okay, and this is essentially what pressurizes the keg and allows you to flow beer through the keg. So that keeps it under pressure. Now essentially this is enough for one complete empty, so one complete round of the keg. And then it'll also allow you to shut off the gas regulator, and you have enough in there to be able to clean the keg out again with your sanitizer, which we'll get to now. So I'm just going to pop those over there for now. Okay. What you'll find next at the bottom of that white box is a product called Stellar Sand Sanitizer. Okay. Now it's a brewery grade cleaner, okay, or sanitizer. Okay, so essentially the main ingredients from here in this content is phosphoric acid, okay, which is 50%, and there's a few other things in here that I can't quite pronounce. Okay, but just keep in mind there's a big sign at the bottom of here: read the instruction, danger, keep out of reach of children, and that's a 500 ml container. Now for your adventure keg, 500 mils, that should last you guys literally almost the lifetime of your keg, unless you're filling it up every day. Okay, because this is a concentrate. I know if you guys are like me, you don't like reading, but please read the instructions on here. Okay, because it is food grade. Okay, it is brewery grade as well, but read the instructions of use on here. Okay, so it is concentrate. So essentially what you want to be using on the back here is you want to be diluting this to 1.5 milliliters, so 1.5 mil per litre. Okay, so what I would recommend for the adventure keg is when you're sanitizing, you probably want to be putting in here 3 litres of water, and it'll be 4.5, well look, somewhere between 3 and 4.5 milliliters. Okay, so what you've got on the top side here is you've got a pourer on here. Okay, so the very bottom rung, I guess, or indicator on your little pourer says 5 mil. Okay, so essentially you want to be just on or just under that 5 mil line every time you sanitize the keg. So it's a very small amount of this that you want to be using. Now read the instructions, but this is a non-rinse sanitizer, so I'll show you guys. I'll run some sanitizer through, but essentially you don't have to rinse it. It'll foam up and everything. Okay, you can tip the contents out or run it through the keg. I usually just give it a quick rinse and then close the lid and then just leave it sanitized. Okay, so sanitizing is very important when you know, when you've got beer, because the main things that are going to attack beer are going to be temperature, oxygen, and then anything that comes in contact with the beer that's not sanitized. So before you fill up your kegs, before you even use them, each time before you take it to the brewery, you want to make sure you sanitize the keg completely, okay? So that's a very, very important step. Next thing you'll find in here, okay, I'll pull out this big brown box, is the keg canister itself, okay? Put that down there. Alright, so that's essentially the keg canister itself with the lid on the top. Okay, that's your adventure keg canister. So as we said before, it is a well, it's just under 4 litres, so it's actually 1 gallon, which is 3.8 litres, okay, in our metric scale. It's double insulated, full stainless steel, so it'll keep your beer cold for, look, up to 8 hours, but it might even be more. I mean, I haven't essentially left it out for longer than that. You've got a plastic cap on the top, okay, to seal it. So if you take that off, you'll also see on here there's a couple of seals on here. There's actually 2 black seals, so these should last. They're rubber seals. They should last a long time. If you ever have issues with the keg not keeping pressure or it leaking from the top, you'll know exactly what it is. There'll be 2 black rubber seals in the actual cap. Okay, so there's 2 ways essentially you can fill this up. Okay, now you can fill the keg so like typically if I'm going to go camping or something like that and I want to put this in my car fridge and I'm not going to drink it straight away, or if I just want to put it in the normal fridge, I'll usually I'll sanitize it first, go to the brewery, get it filled up, and then I'll bung this cap straight on the top and I'll leave it in there. Okay, so that'll completely seal it. If I've got it in the car fridge or I'm taking it away somewhere, I know it's not going to get bumped around. The tap and the regulator sitting on top is not going to get bumped around. Okay, so that's typically one way to do it. Now the second way, I'm going to show you essentially how to assemble the keg. Okay, so what you want to be doing is your top housing. Okay, and make sure this silicone gasket is sitting on there really nicely, and your thread on top there is going to sit on top of your adventure keg. So make sure you get the thread started and you don't cross thread it. Okay, and you want to turn that around and give it a good. You want that to be nice and tight, like so. Okay, so once you've got that on, okay, you can then start, well, actually, I've lied to you guys. Before you even put that on, okay, I've made this mistake quite a few times. You want to essentially attach your silicone hose. So this is your beer line. So you want to essentially attach that to the top housing. As you can see here, there's a little spigot here inside, because you can't get to that once you screw it onto the keg. So I've made that mistake many times, but anyway, it's not a big mistake to make, because you can simply unscrew that and put your line back on. All right. So as I said before, also if you do read the instructions, essentially what you want to do is you want to cut this to 350 millimeters, which is 35 centimeters. So you want it to be enough just to hit the bottom of the keg and then sit on the bottom of the keg just a little bit like that. Okay, so that roughly there, I mean, I haven't measured that, but that is roughly 35 centimeters or 350 mil. Okay, so if you cut it to that length, it'll give you a really good length. You'll be able to pick up all the beer or the liquid, whatever you're putting inside the keg. You'll be able to pick it all up. You're not going to waste too much, or you're not going to waste anything. And then this is also a silicone dip tube. Okay, so if this does tear or deteriorate or something like that, you've got an extra 2 lengths that you can cut because the line's so long. Okay, so you don't have to worry about having spares for that, because you will have some spare line. Okay, if you find, I have had some circumstances where I've put it on the top spigot. I've used it a few times and the top has sort of just teared a little bit on the silicone. Because it is 35 centimeters long, you can actually just cut the top little bit off, okay, and then you still do have enough length to be able to reach to the bottom of the keg. Okay, so that is a bit of a tip for you guys. I'm just going to grab the scissors and cut this approximately 35 centimeters. Make sure you do a nice, neat, clean and straight cut. Okay, so I'm just going to put this other line back in the box, and you don't want to, as I said, you don't want to be throwing that out. You want to be saving that for later on as a spare. So I'll put that back there. Now, as you guys can see here, there is a little spigot inside, okay? Now, all you want to be doing is taking your cut silicone tube and putting it over the top of that spigot as far up as you can, okay? So I think you guys can see that now that I've done it, okay? And it's just going to look like that. So essentially, that's going to sit in the bottom of your keg, and that's going to be your pickup line to grab all the beer. So that'll sit right down at the bottom of your keg. All right. So back to where we were before. We can then essentially put this in your keg. Now be careful with the thread. They are very good quality threads, but you don't want to cross thread them. Okay. So make sure you get them on nice and straight, and then you want to really screw it on nice and tight, because this is going to be pressurized. So you want to make sure that that silicone seal around the bottom of that top housing is nice and compressed, okay? So that's all it takes. You've got that. You can then put your black lid on top of that. So as I was saying before, there's essentially two ways of filling it. So you can fill it without this top housing and put the lid straight onto the canister, or you can have this top housing assembled with your tap and regulator and everything ready to go, and then essentially you put your cap on top, okay? So we're going to do this now, and once again, make sure those rubber housings at the top are nice and compressed, and give that a good turn, because that is going to be all under pressure and you don't want it leaking at all, okay? So I'm going to put that up here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is essentially grab the mini pressure regulator, okay? So essentially what this does is it screws into the side of the keg, and it allows you to screw in your 16 gram disposable CO2 cartridge into the regulator, okay? So this will regulate how much pressure goes into your keg and the pouring rate of your beer. So this is essentially what does that, okay? So you'll see on one side you've got the brass nut. Now this brass nut you want to screw into the side of the keg at the top with the stainless steel thread in there. So once again, just be very careful when you're screwing this on, because you don't want to cross thread it. Once you get it started, it's quite simple. Okay, one other thing, if you find this does leak at all or anything, it shouldn't, okay, if you do it hand tight, but you can put a bit of plumbing thread tape on there, okay, if you do have an issue with that, with the thread. I haven't had an issue with it yet, but if you do find a leak, you can put some plumbing thread tape around, just wrap a few times around, and then screw on the gas regulator, okay. So you want to do that sort of hand tight on there, okay. Doesn't have to be too crazy tight with a spanner. You know, hand tight should be enough. Okay. Next thing, essentially, what I want to do, if I can find it, is grab my tap. Okay. So this tap, if you guys can see that, will essentially sit on that housing there, like so. Okay. So make sure it's nice and straight, because there's kind of like a cog system on here, okay? So it'll just essentially sit in there like that. And then you've got a, what would you call it? There's like a nut sort of screw section on the back here that you then have to tighten onto the back of the tap, okay? So make sure it's nice and straight. I mean, if you don't get it straight, you can do it again. And then you want to screw this nut onto the back of your tap. We'll just do that, and then I'll give you guys a bit of a look, as you can see on there, okay? So this is like a ring nut here that turns on there. Now make sure that's nice and tight. What I've typically found, let me take this off and show you again. Okay, you'll also find you've got a nice silicone gasket in there, in the inside, an O-ring. So just make sure that's all nice and clean, and that it's making a good seal in there. So if that does leak for any reason, you'll know there is a silicone O-ring inside there, but that should be fine. The only issue you might have, if you have something like some shavings or something from the manufacturing process, just make sure that's all clean inside there, just so it seals really well. So I'm just going to put this back on. Okay. Now, what I like to do is do that a little bit tighter than hand tight. So if you've got a set of old multi-grips or a pipe wrench or something like that, don't go crazy, but just grab yourself a little cloth so you're not damaging the keg itself, okay? And then all you want to be doing is just for the last little bit, just giving that a little tighten on there, okay? So don't go too crazy, but you want it just a little bit tighter on this nut here. You just want it just a little bit tighter than hand tight, okay? So as I said, set of multi grips or a pipe, little pipe wrench or something like that. Don't go too crazy, but just give it a little nip up so that it's a little bit tighter than hand tight. Okay, so that's essentially the keg more or less assembled, guys. Okay, the only other thing I'm missing on here is your custom handle for the tap. Okay, so I've got a very nice timber here, and essentially all you do is you're just going to want to be screwing that. Try not to cross thread it, get the thread started, and then screwing that onto the tap. Okay, like that. So you've got a really nice action on the tap. Okay, so that's more or less your keg assembled. Okay, the only thing we haven't put on here is the CO2 canister, and that essentially goes into there like that. Now, I'm not going to do that yet. What I want to be doing first is putting in there a couple of drops of brewery grade sanitizer, okay, your Stella San. So as I said before, you know, you've got a little filler, so don't use this side here on the left. Use this side here on the right where you've got a measurement, okay? So you want to be essentially putting in 4.5 milliliters and filling the keg up with approximately 3 liters of water, okay, from the tap, okay? I mean, you don't have to measure it. If you do, you know, 3.5, or, you know, fill it up to the top. It doesn't matter too much. But before you even do that, what I would probably recommend also is just giving this a good rinse out before you even get started with some warm soapy water, okay? So any of the you know, the metal shavings or the metal dust or anything from the factory or the manufacturing process may still be inside of the keg, okay? So you just want to give it a good rinse out before you even do the sanitizer, okay? But I'm going to run you through this. You know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go fill the keg up with some water from the sink. I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to show you how to essentially flush out the keg and get it sanitized, emptied, so then you can go and fill it up with your favorite beer. Okay guys, so all I've done, I've just got back from the kitchen. I've just rinsed the keg out with warm soapy water first, okay? I'd highly recommend that, just to flush out and get rid of any you know, metal dust or shavings or any dirt or things like that from the factory and the manufacturing process. So that's all done. And then all I've done is I've filled it up with about 3.5 liters of cold water from the tap, okay? Put the lid back on, done it up nice and tight, okay? What I'm essentially going to do now, take that lid off, and I've got, it's just over there. I've already got some Stella San, the sanitizer, already open, okay? So how to use this, if you haven't done it before, if you haven't really you know, brewed or home brewed or used kegs before, you know, no issue. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Try not to get it on your hands because it's in concentrate form. It is quite toxic because it's phosphoric acid. I mean, as soon as you dilute it down, it's no real big issue. You know, it is quite safe, but in this form, you know, you don't want to be, you know, drinking it or getting it on your hands or in your eyes or anything like that. Okay, if you do, you know, make sure you seek medical attention. But essentially what you want to be doing is squeezing the bottle, okay, until we get just under 5 ml there. So it's barely even, as you can see, it's barely even registering. I don't know if you can see that on the little filler, on the little gauge up there, okay. All I want to be doing there is just pouring that inside the keg. Okay, so that's just under, that's 4.5 ml. Okay, that all goes in. Close that one up so I don't spill it. Now what I'm going to do is put the lid on really nice and tight. Okay, keg will be quite heavy now because it's full. Okay, so make sure the lid's tight, make sure that top collar that we did before is nice and tight. The other trick on here is this pressure relief valve, okay, can stay in the open position. Okay, we'll use this later when we release the pressure on the keg, but just make sure that is not in the open position. Make sure it's all the way in. Make sure your regulator, your pressure regulator is nice and tight. Okay. The next thing we want to be doing, make sure your tap's nice and tight. Next thing we want to be doing is making sure on the top, I forgot to mention before, on the top of your pressure regulator, okay, you've got a knob on here. Okay, so it's just like it's essentially just like a tap. Okay, so all the way, where are we? All the way to the right is increase, and then all the way to the left is decrease. Okay, so make sure before you put your gas bottle in, your little CO2 gas bottle, make sure you've got it all the way to the left, okay, which says decrease. So that essentially shuts it off so that you don't have gas flowing into the keg itself straight away. Okay, so what you want to be doing, you don't want to be cross-threading this, okay, when you put your little CO2 cartridge in. You want to make sure you line it up, otherwise you're essentially going to waste one of these, and you don't want to be doing that. Okay, so make sure you get your thread right. Okay, and I don't know if you heard that, but you hear it pierce. Okay, and then once you hear it pierce, you want to just keep going. Okay, so it is a little bit harder than what you think. When you think you're there, you've just got to go a little bit further. Okay, so you'll hear it pierce, keep going until it's nice and tight. Okay, then all we want to be doing now is turning the pressure on. Okay, we can get it up to maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 psi, 7 or 8 psi is pretty good. Now, this will essentially flush out your keg and get it sanitized. So the first time you do this, as I said, you are going to waste, I guess it's not waste, a CO2 cartridge. Okay. The reason why you want to be using one of your cartridges at the beginning is a couple of reasons. Okay, it cleans out your lines and your tap, and it flushes your keg out and sanitizes it. Okay, so that you're ready for your first pour or your first fill of beer. But the other thing it does is it allows you to get the keg under pressure, okay, before you put beer in it, okay, just to make sure you've got no leaks. So now that it's under pressure, it's at about 10 psi, I just want to make sure I've got no leaks. I'm listening for leaks around the pressure regulator, the gas bottle, the tap, make sure I've got no drips around this section here, the collar, my pressure relief valve, the silicone gasket underneath the housing on top of the keg, the handle on top, the cap on top. So I just want to make sure that there's no leaks. Okay, so now I'm quite happy that there's essentially no leaks. What I want to be doing is essentially running the sanitizer through the keg. Okay, so the next step, if you haven't used one of these taps before with a flow control valve on it, now this is probably a good thing to show you when you pour your beer. So let's say, for example, this was full of beer, okay, which is not, it's full of sanitizer, but if it was full of beer, on your first pour, what I typically like to do is put my handle forward, okay, so you pull your handle forward to pour. As you can see, nothing's come out because I've got the flow control set to nothing basically. Okay, so what I then want to do is ease the flow control valve on. Okay, so turn that up like that, and as you can see, the pressure comes either a lot more or a lot less, okay, based on your flow control lever. Okay, so what it essentially allows you to do is control the flow or the pour rate of your beer. So if you've got quite a foamy beer or not a foamy beer, you can control your foam levels. Okay, so without that, you're wasting a lot of your beer with froth. So once you get that set, if you got beer in there, you can essentially leave it after that. But the beer can change as you go. It could get more frothy or less frothy, or settle down if you've just filled the keg. Anyway, back to the sanitizer. What I want to be doing is essentially just flowing it and running it through the keg like so. Okay, so I've just got my tray here. Usually I just do that on the sink. Okay, but just run the whole thing through the keg, okay, until it's empty. What essentially is it's and then you can sort of play around with different settings. So you can play around with your tap, you know what I mean, turn it on, turn it off, make sure everything's working the way it should be, okay. So it gives you essentially, you know, it's dual purpose, okay. It sanitizes the keg, but it also allows you to check for any leaks or any inconsistencies or any problems, and it will allow you to familiarize yourself with the keg and how it works, okay. So a couple of things I think it's good for, okay. So as you can see there, we're starting to get to the end of it. Now I'll let you guys know one trick, okay. It's not so important when you've got the sanitizer, but let's say your keg's full of beer and you're coming to the end, so it starts foaming up quite a lot because your drip tube or your dip tube is not picking up a lot of beer. Now what I like to do when I install the dip tube, I have it going to the bottom and then to the back of the keg away from the tap, okay. So what that allows me to do is be able to rock when I get to the end, just so I can get every little last bit out of the keg. I then tilt the keg backwards, okay, so the dip tube is picking up beer from the very back bottom of the keg, and then essentially I can open the tap and it'll pour out every last drop. Otherwise you find you're wasting too much beer at the bottom, okay. So there's a little bit of a trick for you guys. So anyway, once I've finished sanitizing the keg, now I know my keg's sanitized, okay, and I can then release the pressure and go fill it up with beer at a brewery, okay. So what you want to be doing when you're at this stage, it doesn't matter whether you've got sanitizer in it or you've got beer in it, you've emptied your keg, okay, your keg is still under pressure. If you look at your gauge, you've still got 10 psi of pressure on here, okay. So this is very important safety advice, guys. So you don't want to just be opening the top of your keg because it's going to just explode because you've got quite a lot of pressure in here. What I want to do is turn my gas regulator knob all the way to off, okay, which is decrease. So turn it anti-clockwise, okay. So I'll turn that off, so it's not going to be giving me any more gas, okay. Then I pull the pressure relief valve. You can hear that. So that's essentially taken all the pressure out of the keg, okay. Before I do anything, I just want to have a look at the gauge and make sure it's reading 0, which it is, okay. Make sure my gauge is off. Now you're still going to have, because I've only done one pour of the keg, you're still probably going to have about half of the gas left in here, okay. So that's what I was saying, like if that was beer and you've poured it all through, you're still going to have enough in here to be able to rinse your keg out and then sanitize it so that it's ready for next time, okay. Hopefully that makes sense. But now that there's no pressure in here, I want to essentially take the top off, okay. Now it's safe to do so, okay. Now if there's anything left in there, okay, all I want to be doing now is essentially just going to the sink, tipping any leftover sanitizer out, rinsing it out once or twice with water, and then that's it. Your keg's ready to go. Once I've tipped it out, rinsed it out once or twice, okay, you still will have a little bit of liquid and a bit of foam in there, but that's okay. It is sanitizer, so it's going to keep your keg sanitized. You don't want to completely tip it all out and let it to dry, because then you're going to be getting new contaminants coming into the keg, okay. So as soon as you tipped it out, rinse it once, put the lid back on, okay, and now you're ready to go, okay. So now you can go take it to the brewery, get them to fill it up, away you go. Now when you're traveling with this keg, obviously make sure that the flow control is all the way in the down position so that it's off. So that's just an extra safety measure, just in case you bump your handle. You're not going to be, if it is full of beer, let's say, you're not going to be wasting your beer and spilling out, okay. So there you have it, guys. Look, in terms of safety, we've been through all that. We've been through the filling of the keg, we've been through the sanitizing of the keg. In terms of maintenance, look, I usually just give the inside and the outside a good clean every now and again. You know, definitely after you've finished your beer, so after you've filled it with beer and you've drained all the beer, you've drunk it all, you want to be sanitizing it as soon as possible. Don't leave beer in there for weeks and weeks and weeks, because what it actually does is it cakes up and it clogs the beer line. it clogs all the internals and the seals of the taps. So you don't want to be leaving it in there for too long. So as soon as you've finished your beer, release your pressure, take the top off, rinse it out, and then do this sanitizing process, okay? So as we said, we've wasted this first one, so don't worry about that too much, but that'll just get you familiar with the keg. It'll make sure there's no leaks in there. If you do have some sort of leaks for whatever reason, get in contact with us and we'll guide you through it, make sure everything's okay. So don't be scared to do that. But look, that's really about it, guys. In terms of warranty, that's probably the last thing. You've got a 12-month warranty on all the bits and pieces in there, so that's on your instructions, your warranty as well. If you've got any issues, get in contact with us. It just doesn't cover any damage. So it is an adventure keg, but you don't want to be damaging the tap and the regulator and the seals and things like that, because that's not going to be covered under warranty. Okay, so you just want to be careful that you're not, bumping it around, especially if it's in your car fridge or you're taking it camping or on a picnic and it's in the car. Make sure it is in the box or strapped in really nice and well. Okay, so there you have it, guys. I hope that's been helpful for you all, and please follow the instructions, especially the safety instructions in terms of your sanitizer and the pressure relief and things like that. We really hope you enjoy your kegs. Happy. If you're going to use it at home for your home brew, or if you're going to go out to your bars and your breweries out there and get them filled up, I really hope you support the local breweries, enjoy it. One thing this keg is going to do is it's going to save you a whole ton of glass bottles and cans and boxes and things like that. So yes, you are wasting a gas CO2 cartridge, but you're saving 12 bottles or cans each time you use this keg. So I am quite excited about that. So it is very, very good for the environment, because it is a reusable canister. All right, so let us know how you go. If you like the video, like it, comment, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and happy adventure kegging, guys. Cheers.